All right, we are here today with Rodney Dillard, who's going to serenade us with a beautiful song right now.
It's just background music.
Oh, it's background music. I appreciate that.
That's called source music.
That's how they do it in Hollywood.
Is that how they do it in Hollywood? Is that kind of what you've been doing? Is like writing background music for the last few years?
Oh, I've been doing a lot of things. Musically, I have to get myself together. What have I been doing? I've been reinventing myself every day. You know, I get up in the morning and I reinvent myself.
What is that meeting like in the morning?
Well, you have to have a strong stomach. But I've enjoyed.
Who am I today?
Yeah, I've enjoyed over the years. The whole thing about this is so surreal to me. I was raised not too far from here in Salem, Missouri, on a farm that's been in the family since 1865. It's a century farm, and I'm beginning to feel like a century person. But grew up. My mother and dad both played instruments. My dad played an old-time fiddle, and mother played the guitar. And I thought everybody did. That's the way it was. And I can remember when I first got interested, my brother and I did in music, was mother had an old guitar that, some old guitar, I don't know, and she put it behind the couch and says, "When I'm gone, I don't want you boys to touch that guitar."
That's the secret.
Yeah. That is the secret.
And that's how that started. And then later on, my dad bought my brother a banjo, a K, because what he was working for was a backup band. He wanted somebody to play with it, because he played that old time fiddle stuff. In fact, Missouri did AT&T did a thing on him, a video called Precious Memories.
Really?
It's got Hartford in it and a bunch of people, but he taught Hartford how to do that dance that he
Really?
did. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And he was from Tennessee, a little town out there called Burns, Tennessee. But he met my mother, and they, of course, mother had the farm down here. But Douglas started playing. I can remember Douglas's first thing he did with that K banjo is he took it outside, took a magnifying glass, and burned his initials in it. DFD. There it was. And then I ended up with an old silver tone guitar, and pretty soon Dad had a band.
That's awesome.
And we played a lot of places around Salem as we grew up, and I was just learning, you know, how to chord a guitar and watching other people. And then we got to the point where we started playing all the head knocking clubs in Missouri back then.
The head knocking
Chicken wire?
Oh, it's,
So what'd you get billed as? Was it the Dillards then?
no,
or
we
was
were just a couple of kids out trying to get in, you know, underage. We weren't, no. Yes, I'm 47. Here I'm 13, right? And we met up along the way. I'm cutting this really short, but we met up with Hartford. And Doug and I in Hartford played some things together and played Under the Bridge in East St. Louis at the bars. And,
Really?
yeah. And there's a real education there socially. You know, it's sort of a hillbilly's way of social engineering. And, well, first one thing, then Doug, he went to college. I was still in high school. We cut our first record in Belleville, Illinois, and it was a tune called Banjo and Holla.
Mm-hmm.
I was 16, and he was probably 19 or somewhere there, so 15. You know I don't keep dates very well because of my guitar. But anyway, we started recording then, and we cut several things that got on WCKY, Cincinnati, 1 Ohio. Send now and get your free, you know, fishing lure and your the entire Lord's Last Supper done in rice.
That would be a heck of a prize.
Yeah.
You should. You know, I hope you still have that.
Well, that's what they were advertising, and so from there on, we started doing this, and then we really got to playing around in different places, and then pretty soon we had a song on the jukebox in all the bars in St. Louis. They'd go in, that's us, yeah. And then I was in college. I'd gotten these stupid college scholarships for some reason, and
Education.
So you're college educated? Are you trying to convince me that you're college educated?
what? I had the opportunity to be college educated. And I decided that wasn't for me. I said, Douglas, and he was working, doing very well. I said, I'm getting out of here. I can't handle this anymore. This college stuff, I don't, you know, it's not me. Because I had a professor of sociology at SIU who talked like this and I could not understand anything he said. What? What'd he say? You know. And anyway, I said, let's go to California. And at that time, what was going on, we met some friends who had a little recording studio, Peter Weston, in St. Louis, and we went into his and cut our first project, he and I, and Dean. Dean overdubbed the bass on it.
Really?
And Mitch, by this time, we had befriended Mitch, who was a disc jockey in Salem, Missouri. You know, he'd go out and change the flashlight batteries, and then he could broadcast. And I met Mitch because I traded him banjo lessons. I gave him banjo lessons for a boxer dog.
Good trade.
And the dog was chasing my horse and running it through the fence, and I had to get rid of that and chasing the neighbor's cow. So that deal didn't work out well for me.
Or for him.
No, but then Mitch heard that tape and said, let's go to California. And he says, I have a sister who works for a famous producer out there at the time, Wolf, forgot what it was. Anyway, we ended up with getting an agent before we ever got out there.
So was the idea to get into movies and television?
Our idea was just to get out of town.
Did people know you?
We wanted to play music.
Go see the stars?
Doug and I had entered a lot of the banjo contests back east. The first one we entered, Doug lost to Bill Emerson. And one of the Stonemans was going to say, if anybody else wins, we're going to beat the crap out of you. Or something. But anyway, Doug said, well, we'll do this. We had the album. Mitch sent the album out to our managers out there, who his sister got for us, which was, let me just say, the Dillards and our managers like Abbott and Costello meet the Dillards. And so anyway, we decided that that's where we're going with. So we piled in a 55 Cadillac, Deaton's Cadillac, and a one-wheel trailer with $60 and headed for L.A. and got as far as Oklahoma City.
It's just a little short. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah. 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 Actually, it was 3 months before we got to L.A.
Really?
But I'll skip that sordid part and get to the point where we finally got enough money to get out to L.A. Remember going into the Melrose Motel, because that's all we could afford. They rented it by the minute. And,
so a classy joint is what you're saying.
Yes, it was, yes. And we ended up going to the place they call the Ash Grove. That was the sort of the petri dish of all the folk culture. Mm-hmm. Like I said, when people were coming up to me and asking me, what do you think of the existentialist dilemma? I said, I was Presbyterian for a long time. And true, because I didn't know it. And we walked into this place, got our instruments in the lobby, and started playing. And the guy who owned the club at the time says, you can't do that here. He said, do it on stage. It so happened, and this is the way, it's like one of those stories. The Elektra Records guy was there, from Elektra. William Morris, agent, was there, and saw us, and right after that said, when we came on stage, said, would you like to make a record? And I said, what's it going to cost us? He said, we'll take care of all that. So we ended up initiating a record deal with Elektra Records and signing with William Morris about a week after we'd been there.
Wow.
And they put a little blurb in the Hollywood Variety. It said, these weird-looking guys from the Ozark playing this really funny kind of stringy music, this high music, not high, but, high.
Yeah.
And Andy had a script in front of him. It was called The Darlings Are Coming. And he said, we need some rangy-looking guys who play, bluegrass. He said, call these guys up. And because he was reading Variety that we had signed with Elektra. We went over there. They were shooting an episode. Picture this, you guys. Salem, Missouri kid walks into Gulf Western Studios. Desi Lou, the Lucy Show, all these big shows. Dick Van Dyke, all these shows were happening at the time. And we were auditioning for the Andy Griffith Show, which I used to sit and watch, Boy, that'd be fun doing that show. And Andy stopped the filming of what he was doing. He and the director, Bob Sweeney, sat in front of us and said, show us what you got. So, if I can remember, it ain't the key, I'll tell you. Old Reuben made a train and he put it on the track, ran it to the Lord knows where. Andy, about halfway through the song, slapped his knees and said, that's it. And I turned to Douglas and said, they're throwing us out. And it turned out that he said, "Where are you going? You got the job." And we were supposed to do one episode. Mm-hmm. The second episode, we were sitting there in the commissary broke for lunch, and there was a guy, I can't remember his name. He's the producer of the show. But he talked like this. He walked by and he slapped a whole bundle of letters. He says, each one of these letters represent 150,000 people that liked what you did on the show. So it continued. We did 6 or 7 of them. That was, we had another life besides that. All my life, ever since that show, people go, "Do this."
Yeah.
I was going
Give
to
me the
ask,
face.
I'm sure everyone has asked you, like, whose idea was that for you guys to be slack-jawed?
If you'll notice the episodes, I was the only one that was slack-jawed on there. It just came naturally. But, so, doing that, it was a real duality there. We were doing the Andy Griffith Show when we were in town, and we were doing college concerts and other things. We were doing all the folk stuff, the Hootenanny shows, and all those CBS junk. And I shouldn't say junk, but here we were being Andy Griffith to people who don't follow that, So we had this whole personality thing happening. It's like being schizophrenic. No, I'm not.
I'm sure you had a lot of people thinking you were the darlings. Like,
Yeah, and over the years of all the albums we've done and all the stuff and awards and stuff in Europe people remember the Andy Griffith Show the most. And you know what? It's really sad. We've written so many good songs, and you know what? They want you to go.
But
I'm joking.
There was a whole new music scene that was starting to happen, right? And, I mean, how much of the bluegrass acoustic scene was happening before you got there?
None.
So then all of a sudden it just booms, right?
I'll tell you where it all started. There was a club, and you probably heard about it a lot in different people, called Doug Weston's Troubadour. Mm-hmm. It was downtown, and that's where everybody went to see what the next thing was going to be. Everybody, all the agent vultures were flying around seeing what they could see what would happen, and we happened to be part of that scene. And we used to work the Troubadour a lot, lines around the block and all that stuff. And in the beginning, they set up a guitar shop sort of in the back, and then it was all, peace and love.
Oh, yeah.
It was all just folk music, I had an old dog and his name was Blue. Like Joan Baez did,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I got a story about that too. And that's where everybody hung out. Ronstadt, you name it, everybody. Eric
Really?
Burden, everybody. We also, and my brother, about close to closing time, had everybody in there singing "I'll Fly Away" or "Amazing Grace."
Really?
Yeah, the whole Troubadour would be outside to be rocking with that. Well, then along came the drug culture. I saw it happen.
No effect.
To give you some example, I'll do this again. There was I won't mention her name, but she came to town singing like that. Come to life, I was going to Strawberry Fair, singing, buttercups and daisies. So the drug culture came along, and everybody got into drugs and whiskey, and she came out and become a big hit going, "I don't want to go to school. I don't want to take a bath."
I believe those were the actual lyrics too, right?
I think so. Anyway, the folkies got good, and then they overdosed and died. They got popular, they overdosed and died. I'm making a blanket statement, but that's the way I perceived it. At reality TV here. And so the Troubadour became a bar, and all the instruments came down. But there was Douglas, "Amazing Grace." He's still singing, still had them all, in their cups singing "Amazing Grace," until he rode his motorcycle in there. That's another story.
So this has been the whole night, by the way. I want to say that the whole night has been. And then there was a story, and then we've gone all over the rails. It's been awesome, but
that's what happened. And then we went on, and then when Doug left and formed, Gene Clark left. We toured with the Byrds. We had a whole month. We had our own airplane, and the guy'd go out and meet on the solenoid with a wrench, and we'd take off. It was a DC-7 or 9, prop, and we toured like that. Came back. Douglas. I had a drummer by the name of we hired a drummer and his name was Dewey Martin. And Dewey Martin was the drummer for Buffalo Springfield. And I'll tell you how that came about. Poor Dewey, God rest his soul. Anyway, we did that tour, came back, and Stills, Stills was starting a group with Richie Furay called Buffalo Springfield. And I said, boy, do I have a drummer for you guys. Dewey's great. You'll love him. And so they hired Dewey to come and play drum for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I got a comment 5 years later. You son of a But things like that happened. We did that. Then Doug and Gene left the Byrds. I'm probably boring you.
No, I'm loving this.
Gene left the Byrds, and Doug and he left the Dillards, and he and Doug formed a group called Doug Dillard and G. Clark Group. There you go. Good people. And they had 2 records on A&M that did very well for them, and I got Herb Peterson. And then Wheat Straw Sweet and Copperfields and a few of those others came along. So that's where, and then we just cooked along there for a long time till I came up here because I wanted to raise our son. I didn't want to be on the road all the time, and I was. And I stayed in Branson I've been here, 35 years now.
Really?
Yeah, just down the road from the farm. And then, in about 1979, I became a Christian. And that turned my whole life around. And so I do a ministry now called Remember Your Values in Today's World. And I take that out and show how Andy Taylor personified the fruit of the Spirit. But, and it's been really good. I've been really blessed these last few years. It's like this. Yeah. I can't tell you what this means to me.
Well, I can't tell you what it means to us. This has been one of the coolest situations.
Before any of us played an instrument, our dad had albums of the Dillards, and we listened to those over and over and over.
Because if you didn't eat your spinach, he'd make you listen to it.
That's right.
Sure.
Tonight was like a super honor to be a honorary Dillard for the night. It was like big deal. There's an album called Live Almost that was probably, I can remember as a kid, I listened to that thing cover, start to the end. I love the cover, by the way, with you laying there with the flowers and the whole deal.
That's getting close to reality now. 76, but that came together because they said, "Well, he's here." Harvey, what's his name, with the Electra, said he's here to take the album cover. And I said, "Well, we just don't want to stand there with the instruments, or in front of a rail fence, or a cow head." So I went out to there was a house across the street from the studio, and I went out and stole a bunch of their flowers. Run back in, and we found the sawhorse and put these planks. They were doing something, and I just laid down on that with my bare feet, like in a wig,
Yeah.
And that's how that picture came about.
That cover, I remember it very, very well. And I also remember, I was looking back actually through it just because, I wanted to get back into this, and I listened to that album recently. And it was not only the music that was also so amazing. The live show was cool because there was these stories that with every song, like you mentioned, Old Blue. And I remember that story as a kid, the whole deal of talk about, the difference between the people in California singing Old Blue, and it was like this sweet song about a dog. And he says, and I remember Mitch, was talking about how that we looked at dogs differently in the Ozarks.
Really? We tried, that was real. That humor was real because we all did. I was 7 years old before I realized a dog wasn't my brother. And then I had another story. It's called the Sail Dog story, based on that same sort of thing. But that's another time.
But that was what was so cool about it, and that was what I was going to ask you. It's like that was
you guys
wasn't
knew how to
just
put on a show.
Yeah.
It wasn't just kind of performing music and song after song. You guys connected with crowds, and that really resonated, I think, with us as kids.
Yes, big time.
Really. Well, we felt this way, that humor, because at that time the music, that we'd have to drive 500 miles to find another banjo player. Now I have to drive 500 miles to get away from him.
I don't even have to do that.
I don't either. My wife plays the banjo.
That's right. I was raised with a dad who played banjo. Not a good way to be raised, in case you were wondering. We never got to watch TV in peace. I'm going to tell you that.
Can't fall asleep at night unless I hear that.
But you know what? I don't know if it hardwired your brain, but you guys turned out pretty good.
Well, I don't know about that, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But this is, the music was like that, and that was what I think was so cool about what you were doing was, it wasn't an act. I know a lot of, and I'm assuming when you guys were out in L.A., everybody kind of thought it was like this crazy act and these weird hillbillies showing up and doing this deal, but it seemed like it was all genuine. It seemed like Mitch, that was his style,
We wrote, and in that time I was playing like you always had the guy who plays the foil, and I was doing that part, and it was all facial stuff. But we would sit down and figure some things out that would work and would not, but they would be based on true stories.
Yeah.
Because I did grow up with an outhouse. And when I was a little kid, I did not want to go out in the wintertime in the Ozarks. You know what it's like? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so anyway.
Well, I didn't grow up with the outhouse, but yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but we wanted to let people know in the city what rural folks were really about, not the Judy Canova kind of thing, that Hollywood portrayal of the hillbilly. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I liked about Andy. He got the humor out, and he got the Andy Griffith, he got the what some mountain folks would be like, very quiet, don't say too much, and as opposed to the Beverly Hillbillies, that was a different story. That was hokey pokey. Uh-huh. Of course.
It was still entertaining.
Well, yeah, I did the movie for television with Earl and John Harford. But Hollywood was presenting the music in a different way. He didn't realize that people who played bluegrass, mountain bluegrass music had integrity and values. They weren't just, drinking out of a jug and chasing their sister. It was,
sure?
Yeah. Throwing rocks at course.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Denton County. I don't know what you're doing. But, so there was integrity there, and we wanted to let that come across, even with the humor, by making fun of ourselves there wasn't any kind of crass jokes.
Yeah.
Like the hillbilly humor with the blacked out teeth and all that.
And for us, I don't know if you know this or not, but, we're actually born and raised in Denver. So, Colorado boys. We didn't have either side of that. It was what we saw. But I remember listening to those albums, and it gave us this, whole new vision of what, life was like out here. I didn't been out here, so I didn't know what it was. But it was a cool experience, to hear what you guys were talking about. Like I said, that album meant a ton to me. I mean, all the Dillard stuff was a huge deal for us, but we're in a total different setting altogether, and listening to what you guys were talking about was cool as a young kid, and like I said, I'm sitting here literally holding this album in front of me, listening to all those stories, and the music was incredible, obviously. The hits that you guys did, one right after the other. I mean, this was stuff that still to this day, there's a lot of people that don't even know that these were Dillard's tunes, but they're doing them.
Just about every jam session.
Every jam session. I mean, this was groundbreaking stuff.
I got accused of copying their material. There was a group at Silver Dollar City when I had the show down there, and I got accused of copying their material. And it was Dooley, and there's a time.
I wish you hadn't done
Plagiarizing.
that.
But it's interesting to find out what, as I get older and I look, you start reflecting, and what have you really done, for your time on the planet, and to hear you talk like that, and to maybe magnifying that with other people, that makes me feel really good to hear that it had a positive effect on.
Well, definitely did. Yeah. I mean, I cannot tell you how much we listened to the Dillard's music. My dad was a huge fan, and we learned all that stuff, and it was just it's incredible. Like I said, tonight was a really, really big honor for
excited,
us.
Yeah.
So
wow,
I was really,
I
really
appreciate
cool to
it.
see
Can I have that guitar?
No.
Can I have that one?
Yeah, can I have that one?
You can.
So let's talk about this guitar. This guitar is really cool. This guitar is the Darlin's guitar, right?
This is the Andy Griffith Show, Darlin's guitar. I did all of that, cut all the albums that I've done since, not the first one, but the rest of them. It cut all the records. And, if this guitar would talk, you know what it would say? You've been very cruel to me. You've dropped me, you've beat me, you've poured liquids all over me.
Sell me so that I can get a new owner, please.
Yeah, Brazilian rosewood.
It is gorgeous Brazilian rosewood. So it's a 1963. We looked it up. By the way, he didn't even know what year it was. I just want to point that out. No,
yeah, I didn't.
But it's a 1963 D28, and like you said, tons of history on this guitar.
Oh boy, it sat in a museum for several months, and I thought, it's way out there in North Carolina in some museum out there. I don't know if it was a dinosaur museum, but I could have been in it. But yeah, I thought, no, I'll just bring it out and play it. And
Cool.
Just bring it out so you guys could see it.
I want to see it.
Yeah.
It was cool. I got to play. Not at this second.
Play something on it.
I'd love to play something on it. We'll trade guitars for a second.
You get the little one.
You get the little one.
Oh, I get the.
So that's a funny guitar right there. It's an Irish guitar, and they call it the Wee Loudon. Get it? The Wee Loudon.
Oh, really?
It's pretty classy.
Does it lay out in the patio all night?
Like swells up, yeah.
So, it's a fabulous sounding guitar. It's got so much cool history and stuff. And, it's one of those things that, like you said, it's cool that it can be out there and be seen by other people and played again, which is
Not just
really,
a
really
prop.
cool. It's not a prop, which is really good.
Yeah, some really good guitar players like yourself has had their hands on the guitar.
But I've just been thrilled to kind of see this and talk. We're talking about old guitars, and actually one of my favorite times, we were talking a lot about you guys and a lot of that California history. We were sitting on the bus with Del McCurry one night, and he's telling us a lot of the story of that time period. And he was actually telling me the story of Clarence's guitar at the time, and the one that is
Talk about abuse.
the abuse, of stuff. And he was telling me about hanging out with Clarence and how much he disliked the D28 that everybody just, is the
He shot a hole in it.
Yeah, that's what he was
I
telling
asked
me.
Clarence why he did that. He said, I just want to see if it'd go through.
He's telling us, Dale's saying he was throwing his pocket knife at it, getting it to stick.
He said that he used to literally lay it out on a tree in the backyard and shoot BB guns at it and just.
He did.
He
put a
hated
hole-
it.
He put that hole. That's why it has that big. The hole is bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said, why'd you do that, Clarence? He said, I just want to see if it'd go through. Clarence. Well, I got some great stories about Clarence. What a neat guy he was. But I borrowed one of his guitars on Wheatstraw Suite. There was a song called "Listen to the Sound" that I did a dobro break on, Spanish, and I borrowed his guitar for that date. And
Really?
Yeah. But he had some good stories.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's what is really cool. Like I said, in talking with Del, there was so much history being made out in California that was separate from the bluegrass world that was on the East Coast, and yet it's all landmark stuff. This is things that you don't even know how influenced it was. And I was reading some articles recently about the country rock revolution and how you were involved in that, and that blew my mind because I didn't really realize how. I knew that there was influence there from the Dillards. You could feel it, you could hear it, and you had heard people talk about it. Bands like the Eagles and the Flying Burrito Brothers and all this stuff was happening in that same bubble that you guys were in.
Yeah, it was. It really was. Henley was. He's been very complimentary to me over the years, and really nice.
I wish he'd just be complimentary on me too. He doesn't know.
knew you existed.
He knows nothing about
We
me.
lost the microphone.
I lost the microphone.
That's all right. Just hold it and talk to the rest of the night.
Well, Henley. I have an album that's going to be released hopefully, and Henley came in and did 3 songs with me,
That's awesome.
and that was very much appreciated. I met him back when we were playing a club in Texas, and he came in, and he was dating a girl who was Ronnie Tieffen's, who was a banjo player way back then. It was banjo star niece, I think it was, and they came in. That's when I first met him. Then he came to L.A. and was my neighbor down there for a while.
Really?
Where I lived in Hollywood, yeah. And of course, he went on to do. He did pretty good. Real good.
You think?
Oh man.
So but that's like tons and tons of great. You talk about you had Herb and these guys that have had such influence in music, and it was a cool scene that was going on. That again, it's before the area where we were involved in music, but it influenced all of us, and even though it wasn't the bluegrass strict world, there was tons of bluegrass being involved and
There was
evolving into it.
There was a lot of root music, and Herb took that on, and he was on a lot of hit records out there with different people.
Yeah.
And he took his direction. I went in a direction, and there was quite a bit. Rolling Stone calls us the fathers of country rock, and that was kind of I didn't know if they knew what they were talking about.
I'm kind of curious. I know right now it's been since we've been in bluegrass. There's this staunch traditionalist, I guess,
Fight.
Yeah, that's not bluegrass. Was there that going on at that period where you guys definitely weren't the Monroe, Stanley Brothers?
They crucified us.
So it's been there since the beginning.
We did back porch bluegrass, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything too un-bluegrass about that, except some of those folks above the Mason-Dixon line
Mm-hmm.
in the Northeast says, well, since when do they have echo chambers on the back porches? Well,
That's pretty strict right there.
yeah, well, have you ever yelled? I can yell off my back porch and hear myself coming back 3 days later.
If they're going to go with that, when did they have Leslie's in Monroe's music? You know?
Oh, how about the accordion?
I know.
Heavy traffic ahead?
Oh, yeah.
Well, see, that particular genre, they were so not wanting to change anything. You know, it's a very fascist sort of thing to not want to not move. You know, no, you will keep us this way, and you will hold your picks the way it's supposed to be, and you will not do whole home place in A. You will do it in B. And you know, I just got sick of the bluegrass Nazis.
Yeah. And I guess there's still generation after generation.
They're still around, and I think what the hard part is, and it is funny because again, to us, when in our generation when we started playing, you guys were the tradition. I mean, and I listen to that, and it's always funny to me when I listen to a lot of these people tell me what's traditional bluegrass and isn't, and it's all great music. I'll
right.
preface this
A
by
healthy
saying,
attitude.
I preface this by saying it's art. And if you're going to do any kind of art, you want to be able to create something of your own. I mean, this is I'm going to give you my thesis here tonight.
Yeah,
but you have to make art and recognize it. And what I always found interesting was, you know, the original founders of the music were creating something brand new, and they were mixing something that wasn't done before and making that happen. And then there was your generation, and you had bands like you had the Osborne Brothers, who now everybody will tell you is the most traditional band, but I've got tons of recordings of them with lots of steel guitars and lots of drums
and the high-strung guitar.
Exactly.
String guitar, ding, ding, ding.
And Jim and Jesse, I was just listening to a lot of, and these are our pioneer groups.
Scruggs went off
and Scruggs went off and did the Earl Scruggs Review and that kind of stuff. And I love it because it only influenced us to become better musicians and let us understand more of the art form that is music, not just necessarily what was bluegrass. And it's cool to have pioneers like you guys who are, you know, like you said, I know you had to be crucified, like you just said, but still had to fight your way through and make music happen that we all get to enjoy now as the traditions of music, you know. So
it was worth the struggle.
Well, good. I'm glad you did it.
The only time we ever had a pop record chart, you know, our albums have sold consistently over the years, they're still selling, was the Roots and Branches album when we did the tour with Elton John. Mm-hmm. And that introduced us to another whole audience who later on got introduced to bluegrass. Mm-hmm. So that's how it all works. It all networked. Mm-hmm. And for people who just want to keep it in a museum till it becomes incestuous and boring, you know, how long can you copy another person's art until, you know, it loses its original value?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I know I don't want to recommission.
Curious about that. Whether it's
the Mona Lisa.
It's just something that's come in the later years, or if that's always kind of been the.
It's always been there. And I grew up with Ralph and Carter, Flatt and Scruggs, the Blue Sky Boys, way back. You know, some of the old timey music. Because I grew up in that. It wasn't like I had discovered it and was trying to find my roots. I had got my roots and I was trying to find the branches.
That's right.
You know, I understood that music. I lived it. I lived that. I lived that life, a farm life. It wasn't something that I just put on a work shirt and a leather vest and became that. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened to the New York boys. They put on the work shirts and the leather vests and became music of the people. Mm-hmm. You know, and Mitch and I both kind of just poo-pooed that.
Good.
It wasn't real. It was just, like I say, it's social engineering.
Well, like I said, we needed those pioneers because they gave us this, you know, you guys were all part of this thing that made us what, you know, we got to be. Not that we made very much out of it, but it was just awesome to, you know, to have that as our new foundation of what the roots music was. Because, you know, as you know, that it goes generation by generation, and what is roots to the. I listen to some of these young guys that I'm working with and gals that we work with and teach music to, and the stuff that I consider to be the root stuff, they don't even know what that is yet.
Right.
They're still working on what they're and they're going to work their way back like what we did. And we have to learn all that
It's
stuff.
music archaeology.
Yes, it is literally.
Yeah.
Genealogy.
But you know what Earl Scruggs said to me? He said, when I started playing the band, Jerry, he said, I didn't have anybody to follow. I was just playing an instrument. Mm-hmm. He had no rules. Thus, he had no rules. Look what he created for everybody else.
Exactly.
That to me is a prime example of why you should never stifle any kind of creative thing like that.
Well, again,
cool.
for me, I know Jeremy, I know Jason, Dad, all of us. We thank you guys very much. For
I'm
what
very
you
excited
do.
to hear this new project you've got coming out because that's going to
Me
be
too.
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got some unusual things on it that everybody thinks they've got something unusual, but for me, it was the bookend to Wheat Straw Sweet. It was my final statement in a way, and I just trust that it's in God's hands at this point. So.
Very cool.
But I had a lot of help with Skaggs and Leftwich and Sam Bush and those guys.
I think I lost my call. I don't know about you. Did you get?
I missed it, I think.
I think that was it.
Andy was next
Yeah,
on
I
the
looked.
Sam Bush was next.
I looked in the phone book. I looked and I Googled it and I said Chapman.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. No,
Chap,
that was.
C-A-
Oh, that's
yeah,
where I
sorry.
lost it. Yeah,
That's a mistake.
Well,
but I've enjoyed. I enjoyed you guys' show and
Well, thank you.
And I saw the one with Marty just before I came up here, and that's
awesome.
neat because he's
awesome.
something, yeah.
And it's been awesome to get to talk to these, like you guys and all these artists that we just absolutely admire. This has been a special thing for us, and we are so blessed to have this opportunity to be able to do stuff like this with you. And I want to thank you again for coming here tonight.
Well,
This
thank
is
you guys.
awesome.
It's really been good. I needed this, because if a guy who used to work every day of his life, if I turned down the gig, I felt guilty,
yeah.
And not having, like Beverly said, the last 3 or 4 months we've laid off and played with the grandkids, but I'm starting to feel that, I got to get back out there.
itch.
I'm looking forward to the next few months, so I can get back out there.
That'll be great.
You need to get John McEwen on your show.
I would love to get John McEwen on the show. Can you make that happen?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I would love that to happen. That's
Yeah,
another
I'm not
huge
trying to be arrogant, but
No, we're going to use it.
And by the way, if you're looking for me over the next 6 months or so, if you need to get a hold of me, I'll be hanging out at his house, listening to more stories, going through all of his stuff, rifling through all the cool memorabilia. I'm going to be all over this. So
I got some.
I will bet you do, including this guitar right here, which
Yeah.
I heard you were leaving me.
I think
price
I
is
made
right.
promises to a lot of people.
What you have?
Yeah, I have a terrible thing. No, I'm going to sell it.
Are you? Well, if
gotta find a good home.
we can help you find a good home for it, we'll definitely do that. So if you guys are looking for one, we'll try to find you a
Piece of
good
history
home.
right here.
I think if I could figure out a way to make it happen, it'd be hanging here in the shop, and we'd be playing it and doing that. But someday we'll find something. We'll make it happen.
Well, you have a great shop here.
Thank you.
I didn't realize you had such neat stuff in here, and that mandolin that you're playing.
Yeah.
That thing really sounds good.
It's really nice. Just got that in, so I'm learning how to hold it too.
That's cool. Those mandolins and instruments are getting so high priced anymore, aren't they?
It is. But there's also great quality instruments that are coming in that are getting affordable too. So it's always good, to see a little mix of a little bit of everything. So
I remember my first guitar was you couldn't even push that. It was like a cheese grater to push down the strings, and it was just difficult. But
and it's been fortunate now. We've been seeing that with a lot of students in here. Is instruments are coming a long way, and you can get an affordable, decent playing instrument.
learn
Where,
on.
like you said, it used to be you couldn't do that. So
if it hadn't been for Stills, who drove up the price of the herringbones, paying I think $5,000 or something for the one way back in the 70s or 60s or something.
which now is officially worth like $200,000. So
When I was in Japan, all our antiquities instruments, I walked into this place in Tokyo, and it was a music shop, but they had these glass cases all way high up there, and all the Martins and all the Gibsons and stuff were in these cases, the really ancient stuff, and they weren't being touched, weren't being played, but they were in Japan. You can't take a samurai sword out of Japan that has any antiquity to it.
Yeah.
But we've lost all ours. Well, anyway,
Where this guitar is going to end up.
Yes, yeah. No, I hope not. I hope it gets played.
Be a good player.
I'm gonna keep watching you play it for a while until we do find it a home.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it out once in a while and play it some more. We're
Excellent.
gonna do some more TV, and I may take it out
Cool.
just for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, we sure appreciate you being here tonight.
It's been
Thanks
my
for
pleasure.
making this trip. It has been awesome.
been really
I'm
exciting.
thrilled.
You guys keep it up and keep the reality in it. You know?
We're trying.
It's truth is really a schizoid thing, isn't it?
Some people don't like it very much.
And if you do find it, it goes whoop. It's like trying to hold on to a wet bass.
Yes.
Sometimes, especially in this day and age when you're getting fed a lot of stuff.
Stuff, exactly.
So
I like that.
non-reality.
Like he brings out the wet bath. This is more that Ozarkian. People in New York are not catching that stuff at all right now. But we do appreciate it. Thank you
Thanks
all
so
for
much for
coming
being
here.
here.
Thank you guys. Keep it up, and I wish you the best. And,
Thank you so much.
Anything I can do to help you, let me know.
Just let me hang out at the house.
Okay.
Doug
got
Dillard,
anything?
ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Doug Dillard.
yeah.